Welcome to the With Natasha Russell podcast. I'm your host, Natasha Russell, and we are back with another episode. Each week, we are diving into heartfelt discussion and stories about what it means to live a faith-inspired, faith-led life. Today, I have Cassandra.
Hi.
Cassandra Powell is a worship leader, entrepreneur, and a mentor with a heart for ministry and empowering women. Pastor's daughter, she has led worship in Ontario and globally, embracing a life of faith and service. As a wife to Andre and a mother to Zion, Cassandra understands the journey from singleness to marriage and the wisdom needed to navigate life's transitions. She has successfully ran her business for years, proving that faith and ambition go hand in hand. Passionate about mentorship, Cassandra equips women to honor God in their relationships, careers, and personal growth. Today, she shares her journey, wisdom, and insight on ministry, marriage, and hearing God's voice with us. So, welcome.
Thank you. It is so good to be here.
I'm so glad to have you. You know that you're very special and dear to my heart. So, thank you for your yes. Thank you for having this conversation with me. And I'm just excited to dig in. Let us know a little bit about yourself, aside from what you just said. Tell us, who's Cassandra?
Yes, I'm a child of God. When you're a pastor's kid, you churchy, right? So, right? So that they teach you how you're supposed to say things. So I would say that for in all seriousness, yes, I'm a child of the God, of God, of the God. Yes, I enjoy life. I love having fun, and I try to bring fun into everything that I do. I just think that we should live life to the fullest, and I'm a positive person. I try to be as encouraging as I possibly can. Like you mentioned, I'm a wife and a mom and a minister and just play different roles. But at the end of the day, I'm just a girl that just wants to give her best to God and give her best to others.
I think
Yeah.
you summed it up nicely. Tell me, so your dad's pastor.
Yes.
How long has he been pastoring, or what did that journey look like for you?
So I grew up in St. Catharines, which, if you don't know where that is, it's close to Niagara Falls, about 50 minutes away. Born and raised, spent most of my days. Church kids should not know that. So, anyways, I grew up in St. Catharines, like I mentioned, and my dad is always, my mom as well, always involved in ministry. So at the time, though, my dad was assistant pastor at the church in St. Catharines. And then God called him to start the work in Grimsby, which they've been there for many years. I don't even know exactly how many years. So maybe about, oh gosh, that's going to be aging me, maybe about 30 years. So he started pastoring when I was 16. It was a lot. That was a really huge transition. So not that St. Catharines is a big city by any means. However, Grimsby is a town. So I used to always say to my parents, there's only 2 streetlights in this place and take me back to the city, right? St. Catharines. It was Toronto. But for me, the big transition was going from being a part of a big youth group, being a part of a music team, to now being part of a church that was my family and one other family. And so then I became all things. When we had kids, now you're the Sunday school teacher. I became the music director overnight. If I wasn't playing, there was no music. So that was a big transition for a 16-year-old. And I definitely struggled a lot in that season. I also grew a lot during that season. And even though St. Catharines is only maybe 15 minutes away, when you're 16, you can't drive yet.
Oh my goodness.
It might just be across the world. So I'm like, how am I supposed to get to my friends? This is terrible. Yeah, so a little bit of background of how my dad started pastoring, and I would say I feel like I was thrown into ministry, but I wasn't thrown into ministry. That was just God's plan for my life. But at the time, I felt like I was just thrown in.
I was going to say, because you said an interesting piece there about being a difficult transition or being really hard to navigate all of this responsibility being placed on you. So how did you, looking back, how do you see God's hand in all of that into where you are now? And another question is, how did that affect your relationship with God? Because you're 16. Everyone's living their life. They're doing their thing.
Right.
Do you feel like you had to mature quickly in your relationship with God, and then that caused you not to know Him? Talk a little bit about that.
I definitely think it was God's protection for my life, because I would say I have the tendency to hide. And when I was at the bigger church, it was easier to hide behind people, behind things. And so now when you're in a church of, there was maybe 8 of us, there's no hiding. Now it's a funny story, then it wasn't, but I don't even remember what I had done, but something bad enough that my dad felt like I needed to step down from playing. And my dad was just like, you know what? Even though I'm the pastor and I have to, whatever I'm preaching, I have to live by that. And so I remember having that conversation. He said, "You're not going to be playing or singing."
Mhm.
Now imagine if I'm not playing or singing, I'm sitting on the front row. Let's go be doing something. I just sat there, right? So obvious. I don't remember. I'd have to ask him now how long that was for, but I'll never forget that. But there was just no place to hide. So
Right.
that's the first thing that I think that comes to mind. And then the second thing was it really allowed me to grow my relationship with God, right? Because I couldn't just say, "Oh, I'm just showing up to church, just doing my thing, part of the kids' choir, part of this." I really had to ask God for everything because there was a lot of things I didn't know how to do that I was learning. And as the church was growing, I had to grow as well. There were so many areas that God just wanted me to thrive and to grow in. And I will say there was definitely times that I was resentful. I was frustrated because I'm like, why can't I just have it like other people? And I remember my parents would always say to me, "You have to be an example." And I used to hate that word example. I didn't ask to be no example. I'm just trying to live my life. I did not ask for this, right? But that was always the thing, you have to be an example. And so I didn't know then
Mhm.
that God was teaching me and raising me to be a leader. I had no idea the doors that God was going to open. I mean, even if I did know, I would have been like, there's no way I'm going to do any of that. I'm not interested, right? And so it taught me so many things about God and it taught me things about myself. And now I can look back and say that was by far the best season of my life in terms of growth and in terms of trusting God. And also just in realizing that whatever I need, God's already placed within me.
Mm.
So there's moments where I'm just like, I don't know if I can lead a team once our church started growing. And everyone that was on the team was a lot older than me. Plus, I had a couple of family members on the team. And I remember I would always just cower down when I would say, "We're going to do this song." And there's one lady on the team, "That's not how the song goes." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, 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 you're right." And then I remember the day that I said, "You know what? This is how we're going to do this song." And they're like, "She growing up." But it literally just working with different types of personalities. There's so many things that I learned in that season that I was there. Maybe I don't know how many years I was there before I went off to school and then moved on, but there was important lessons I had to learn during that time. So very, very grateful for it.
I think there's so many things that you said there that maybe a lot of other, just like PKs and people in general, can relate to. And especially with that leadership aspect, that people always joke about it, but they're like, "Oh, my resume was built in church. This experience." Oh,
That is facts.
I really love that. But to that person
Mm.
who's struggling and wondering, "I don't know if I can do this. I feel like a lot of responsibility has been placed on me." What would you say to that person who's still in the thick of it? Always cool to talk about, "Oh,
Once you made it through.
exactly."
Yes.
But it's like, what do I do if
Yes.
I'm currently in that space and I'm being called upon all of this responsibility and I'm still trying to grow an authentic relationship with the Lord? What would you say to that person?
So this is what I would say is that God will never put you in a situation where you are going to drown. It might feel like you are drowning. You are in the water, but you are not going to drown. I can tell you throughout my life, I have been there countless times. It doesn't end.
Yeah.
It's not like I got past that and overcame that. And then I'm like, I'm good for the rest of my life. This keeps happening. It continues to happen. I'm sorry. Hopefully that's not discouraging,
No.
but right, but it continues to happen. So this is what I would say is that whatever God is asking you to do or whatever position that you are placed in, even if it wasn't something that you wanted to do,
Right.
is to ask the Lord how to navigate that specific situation.
Right.
So what I mean by that is a lot of times we want God to remove the storm, to remove the difficulty or the trial, right? And we just want things to be easy because in our humanity, we just want things to be chill, right? And that's just growth is not going to happen from that, right? So in that situation, you're asking God to give you the strength to navigate. So I've learned over time that rather than asking God to remove it, I'm asking God to give me the strategies to get through it. And every time God shows up. So what that means is that you are coming from a place of humility of rather than begging God to remove it, you're saying, "God, if you're allowing this to happen, then show me the things that I need to be able to do this well." Right? And God literally will show you how to do that. So there's actually a young lady right now that's in the same position that I was in when I was 16. She's a few years older, but she's now being thrown into that same position that I was thrown into.
Right.
I don't want to say thrown into that God placed me in, but I'm just trying to be real as far as how we feel, right? Yes. And so I'm having these conversations with her to say, you know what, I am aware that you don't want to be on taking this role on. and I'm aware that you're thinking, hey, this is not the position that I asked for.
Right.
But if this is the door that God opened for you, then you have to trust him that he knows what he's doing.
Right.
And it's going to stretch you.
Right.
And the reason why it feels uncomfortable is because you can't rely on yourself. You have to rely on God. And so then that means that you can't be in control of the narrative. You can't be in control of the outcome. You just say, "Hey God, I'm just going to give my best to this." And that is a heart. So it's a perspective change.
Right.
And so if you start there and your heart is surrendered to whatever God is asking you to do, because it's one thing to be at the altar singing, "I surrender all." And it's another thing to actually do it, right?
Huh?
And God literally, I'm telling you from experience
Yeah.
that he will give you the resources that you need if you're like, say you can play some basic chords and they're like, we need you to play every Sunday. Now, you can't just keep playing the same basic chords.
Yeah.
Go to YouTube University, get a teacher, right? What I'm learning is that when we do the possible, then God will do the impossible. And so then as we're putting the time and the effort into that, then guess what? Then we're learning things. People are showing up to help mentor us, to teach us, to take us through that. So that's what I would say.
I think you said something that's super key. I think, especially in this generation, we'll see it where we go from convention to convention,
Mhm.
church service, and it's like you feel the tug, the call of God, and all of those things. And it's beautiful to surrender in the moment of
Right.
when the Spirit is
Yes.
the Lord is there, and you're amongst people who are also motivated and feeling inspired and all these things. But then it's on from the Monday to Saturday. That's when life hits.
Right.
Right?
It's so true.
So I think what you said, doing the practical, and I love, love, love what you said there about do the possible and let God do the impossible.
Mhm.
God. What is one of the ways that practical advice that somebody can, when they realize I'm too hands-on, I'm trying to control the situation, I'm trying to make it work the way that I want it to work, or I'm frustrated, I'm resentful toward God because why did he let this situation happen? Why am I thrown into ministry? Why did my family have to move? Whatever the case may be,
Mhm.
why didn't I get the job? Why didn't I get into the school I wanted to get into? What's one practical piece of advice that you give?
To trust God, you have to spend time with him. This is not going to happen because you want it to happen as far as you changing that perspective. If you spend time with God and you spend time in his presence, your mind is going to completely change. Your perspective is going to shift, right? But there's just sitting here, we could talk about this all day. Oh, and I could give you great advice on this is how you trust God. But you actually need to spend time with him. And this is what I've learned is that when I am, and not trying to over spiritualize, I'll give you some practical tip as well. But when I spend time with him, then I'm like, and I'm bearing my heart, and I don't hold anything back from God, right? Because he already knows my thoughts. He knows my heart. He already knew what I was going to say before I said it. And so I'm like, you know what, Lord, this is really frustrating and I'm really angry with you. I don't want to be angry with you. I don't understand why you've allowed this to happen or why you're allowing me to go through this.
Yeah.
But I'm just praying, God, that you would just fill me with your peace and help me to trust you even when I can't see the end, right? And when we're going through, I actually just had this conversation with my husband a couple of days ago. We were talking about the process of waiting on the Lord and that we want everything yesterday, right? This should have happened already. And I put my time in, I did it, right? And that's how we are. I did my time, right? And so why am I not seeing this come to pass?
Right.
Now, this is the interesting thing is that when we actually get into a place where that thing now has come to pass,
Right.
every time for me, I'm like, thank God it didn't happen earlier. Thank God it didn't happen on my time schedule. So when the Lord is asking you to wait, there's a reason for that. There's certain pieces that need to fall into place before you can walk through that door. And if you walk in too soon, things are not going to be set up. It's going to be from every side. And then you'll be like begging God to get you out of it. Literally. This literally applies to relationships. There before I was married and I'm like dating. Are we allowed to say that dating? The church kids. So just to talk about that briefly, but I remember there was this guy I just was really into and I'm just wanting it to be God's will and nothing was coming together. Nothing was coming together. Great guy. Sure, he's still a great guy. And it just wasn't working out. And I just had to walk away from that only to find out that wasn't, I would be a different person if I ended up with him. And again, I'm not saying he's a bad person. He just wasn't who God had for me. And so there's so many, God is God's protection when he's asking us to wait on him, right? And to trust in him. So my first thing is to be in his presence and to ask him those questions. Don't sit around with your girlfriends and just be talking about, I can't believe this is happening. And they're all giving you their little, not to say there's not value in those friendships. However, allow God to be the first place that you land. That needs to be where you go first, to seek him first. It's amazing how completely he changes the way that you're thinking about it. And the other thing is just to pray and ask him to give you peace while you're waiting. And don't expect everything to happen overnight, because I'm expecting that overnight I'm just going to now be trusting God. And it's a process, it's in a journey. And then even when we get through that, another situation comes up. Why is it that we forget everything that we just went through? So, but the key is to recognize that faster and faster each time. So if it took you 3 months before, don't let it take you 3 months the next time.
Yeah.
You recognize within yourself, take a moment. I'm having a hard time trusting God. I'm frustrated that he didn't open up that door that I thought he was going to open, or that job, or whatever the case may be. And this is what I say. If there's been jobs I've gone for and it didn't work out, I was like, God has something better for me. And every time. So it's like go and maybe you beg God to open that door. And meanwhile, something better was down the road. So if you could see the whole picture, would you not want to wait? Right. So it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to wait.
Right. No, I agree 100%. And like I said, it's something that I don't think it's discouraging. That's also the point of this podcast, is really to talk about the things that people aren't talking about and the nuance of life, because we pretty it up and we don't really address what people are dealing with Monday to Saturday.
Right.
Sunday is a different story, and we come to be edified and to build each other up and everything like that. That person who's asking the question of, well, I'm waiting and I do feel discouraged, or it doesn't always feel good, what do I do? And so it does need to be addressed. It's not discouraging to say that obstacles are going to come. It's actually biblical. I have an issue when we go to church and we're just like, I can't wait until I get over a situation, because I'm like, it seems like we're saying to people, once this struggle is over, that you're good. And it's like, that's not really.
No, it is not.
Hebrews 11 actually talks about it, that all of these people by faith, they endure.
Yes.
Not seeing the promise.
Right.
And the promise was literally held off. They haven't seen the promise fulfilled because there's still us to come.
Right.
There's still generations that need to be saved, more lives to be lived, and everything like that. So it's truth of it is that we're called to suffer with Christ.
Right.
Through situations. And like you said before, God is really using these things to refine us.
Yes.
Over and over again, right? You touched into my next topic, or what I wanted to talk about, but you talked about waiting, right? So we know that you're married to Andre.
Yes. Hey, babe.
Tell us, how is it that you met Andre? And I know you have a really unique story, actually. I think this was closer to the time when I got to know you. I read how you almost got married to someone else.
Oh, wow. We going there. Tash is holding nothing back.
Got married to Andre. So talk to those women who are in their waiting season, the desire for marriage, just how you navigated that, how you knew Andre was the one, and just some tips for those who are waiting on the Lord in that season.
So since you mentioned the previous, yes, we will not name him, right? Protect his privacy. I'm never going to try to bash somebody. I'm just like, it's not for me, right? Well, the previous relationship, I was in love with this person and they were in love with me. And I really, really wanted it to be God's will. That's a long story of how we got together, but we were together for a couple of years. And then came the time I knew he was going to be asking me to marry, because I lived a distance away from each other. So when he was coming there, everything was very intentional.
Right.
So when he met my parents, and then I knew he was taking my dad out to ask him for his blessing. And my dad didn't necessarily give him his blessing. Wait, listen, my dad was hardcore, even with Andre. But my dad was hardcore. Nobody was good enough. And so he just said, you know what? I think along the lines was that he trusts me to make my own decisions, right? And so that's not necessarily what somebody wants to hear. So isn't it yes? Are you cool with this? Or are you not? We were engaged, but this is the interesting thing. I knew it was I could feel it. I knew it was gonna be happening or coming up. And so it was a very romantic proposal, but it didn't feel right. I felt awkward. I was questioning myself. Am I supposed to say yes? And I was so confused and conflicted, because I was like, but I love this person and they love me. They love the Lord. I love the Lord. But something just doesn't feel right. And I say yes. And I'm just like, it's just me. Obviously, I've never done this before, so it's fine. I'll figure it out. And so now start the engagement process. Everybody is over the moon, excited, and wedding plans are happening. And meanwhile, I am in turmoil. And every day it's just this uneasy feeling. And I'm just like, this doesn't make any sense. I didn't know who to talk to, so I didn't talk to anybody about it. And I was just terrified. And so I remember this had been going on for maybe a couple of months of just feeling this. And I was excited about certain aspects, but terrified about just others, right? So I didn't even know how to talk to my fiance at the time about it. Cause I'm like, how do you say, hey, I'm not really sure, right? So I remember it got to a point where I just couldn't take feeling that way anymore. I had no peace. And that is a clear sign that this is not the Lord. I had no peace whatsoever. I was having problems sleeping. It's just every day is just torture. And I'm just like, this doesn't make any sense. I never went and tried on a wedding dress. And my mom was like, that's usually the first thing a girl wants to do is that. And I was like, I'll just wait. And she's okay, that's different. But I was like, I couldn't bring myself to do it. And so this went on for, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 months. And then there was a youth leader at my church, and I trusted his opinion. Also, he was a very unbiased person. And so I knew that if I could talk to him without him trying to push me into something. And so I called him and I said, this is what's going on. And he was like, oh my. It was the first time I admitted, I don't think I want to get married. Oh my. Oh no. Oh no. Right?
How did you feel when he said, oh my? You were like, yup.
It didn't make me feel bad. It's just like I was already feeling that way inside. So it just confirmed, right? Relief. Now I can breathe, right? And so I remember we had this conversation where he was praying for me. And I remember he said, Cass, you don't have to do this. If you're feeling like this is not for you and this is not what God has for you, you don't have to do this. And it just gave me the permission to feel like maybe I don't have to go through this, because I really thought that I had to. And I thought, well, my parents are going to be disappointed. His parents are going to be disappointed. I was thinking about everybody else. Right. And then I remember the one day when I was praying about it, I said, Lord, because before my prayers were like, Lord, just change my heart. Help me to be comfortable with this. And God wasn't answering that prayer. And I remember the day that the Lord just said to me, I've already spoken to you about this. This is not the one for you. You want it to be the one, but it's not the one. I remember where I was kneeling in my parents' basement and I was absolutely devastated, because I'm like, how in the world am I going to give this pretty ring back? We're in the wedding plans and it was just so, now hearing it, when you hear it, you're like, girl, but when you're in it, you're just like, this guy is amazing. Nobody's ever going to love me the way he loves me. I'm telling you, it was all of the things. Yeah. So I was like, now what do I do? And so this has led me to be praying specifically to ask the Lord, how do I navigate this? And how do we do this? And so then I decided it was time to talk to the fiance. And obviously, you can only imagine how he responded. He was quite upset. And so I was said to him, even though I knew the Lord was saying no, I didn't want to break his heart. So I said, okay, maybe I just need some more time. Maybe I need more time. So he was in the States and he was going to be moving to Canada, which made it even worse. And then as the time got closer, and this is 6 months before the wedding, I haven't called it off. I just said, maybe we just need more time. Yeah. So he's like, well, when I get there, we'll be in premarital counseling. We'll figure it out. So now he's on his way to come move to Canada. And then I realized maybe I really can't get him. Don't let him cross the border, Lord. Oh my word. So he made it across the border. Oh my goodness. I haven't told the story in a very long time. So it's just like, it's comical now, but at the time it was like heartbreaking, right? So he makes it across the border. I'm like, oh, now what am I going to do, right? I should have just ended it on the phone call, but no, because I didn't want to hurt him. And by prolonging it, I just made the situation worse. So he comes across, and I know for sure this is not it. This is not a time thing. More time is not going to make this better. And so we went to our first premarital counseling session and broke up in that session, because I started sharing how I was feeling, and they had separated us, asked us questions separately, and they brought us together and talked about what our answers were. And it was at the time the most beautiful breakup, if there's a way to put that. It was just peaceful. I felt like a burden was lifted off of my shoulder, right? Peace in the breakup. And we were just able to say, and he, at the time, he was saying he felt the same way. Later on, he did admit that he didn't feel the same way. Right. However, in the moment, everything that I needed provided that, because I didn't want to devastate him. How is life going to go on without me and without him, all of this? And I'm telling you, I felt so much lighter after that. I was like, I can breathe again. I felt like I got the best sleep that night. Yes. So that's part one. And then it was years later that Andre came into my life. And sometimes we think, oh, I did the right thing. I followed through. Yeah. So then that means tomorrow, babe, the next babe is coming along.
I think a lot of women specifically go through that, or they're afraid. They know that they're not supposed to be in a relationship. They know that this is not the person, but they're afraid of starting over.
Yes.
Right? So what would you even say if you stick a pin in it right there to that person? Because women in the church, outside of the church, women who may be watching this right now and they're like, I'm literally in this position and it's cool. We can laugh about it.
Yes,
But
right.
what do I do? I know this person is not for me, but I'm just so scared of starting over and waiting on God. What if God doesn't send my husband?
Yes. I really believe that if God has given you a desire to be married and he's placed that within you, then he's going to provide, right? Doesn't matter how long it takes, he will provide. That's a promise that's been given to you. He's going to provide that. Now, as far as, because I've shared this testimony before. We used to run the young adult ministry for Ontario. And I can't tell you the amount of women that came up to me afterward and they knew that that relationship, they should not be in it. You always know. We can try to sugarcoat it. You can try to put all the cute pictures on Instagram, but you know, because God will let you know and you feel it within yourself. And so you can try to pretty it up. And so this is what happens is, and this is what I will tell you to give you hopefully the courage to let it go, is that marriage is not going to fix it. Marriage, listen, yes, we think it's, I am telling you right now, I've known people that knew that that wasn't what it's supposed to be, and they still said, you know what? I'm going to walk down the aisle and because I want all the things. And you know what? We'll figure it out later. It's not going to be figured out later. Because even when you are in the will of God, marriage is still difficult. So now imagine you're married and you're going through things because life will be life in. It's just right. And you're going through difficult times. Can you imagine looking at that person? I should have never married this person. They were never the will of God for my life. What am I supposed to do now? Because I will tell you that with myself and Andre, even when we've gone through difficult moments, I've never had that thought, man, I wish I wasn't married to him. Man, I want to punch him in the throat right now. That punch in the throat thing, me and Andre, that's our joke amongst each other. But there's times, right, where we're frustrated with one another, but I'm not questioning the will of God. Right. So you need that foundation of knowing that this is the person that God has for you. So if you're walking in and that foundation is shaky, you are not going to be happy. Your house is not going to be filled with joy and peace. It's literally like having rocks in your backpack and walking uphill every day.
That's such a good analogy. Yes.
Extra weight. Who needs that? Right. And then you, if you are blessed to have children, you throw kids in the mix. Right. So you want to know that that person is the will of God. So I'm saying that to those women because I've been there before where I'm like, what if another opportunity doesn't come up? That right there, if you are questioning that, then to me that's questioning, do I really have trust in God? Right? Because what you're saying is that this is the best that God can do for me. Right?
I think that also just alludes to the fact that maybe God wasn't the one who did it because
Well,
if you're trying to hold
I didn't want to say it like that, but you're right. Is this you or is this God?
that's a limited view of
Yes. Now looking back at the experience of when it wasn't God to when it is God or when it was God, the difference is night and day. The difference is turmoil and somebody that I loved and that treated me so well and was such an amazing person to me. But I had no peace. God has given me that and more, and I have the peace of God and we have joy, right? So it's like when you actually see and feel the difference of being in the will of God and being out of the will of God, to me, the peace of God is invaluable.
Absolutely.
Right? So if you are in that situation and you're like, this could be my last chance, that's not the truth. I want you to go back and to spend time with the Lord and just ask the Lord to give you peace and to give you the courage to let go of the things that are not of him. And it will hurt. It's going to hurt. I cried a lot of tears, but I never regretted that decision ever, not for a moment. God, you got to get me through this. It was a lot of conversations with my girlfriends and just having just real authentic conversations and crying through it. But then God got me through that. And then I realized this is something that I wanted. This is not something that God had for me.
You spoke to the piece of adding children to the mix. So obviously you have Zion.
Yes.
So how has the dynamic changed for you in marriage, but also you as an individual becoming a mom?
Yes.
That must have changed you, especially because you were traveling, you were doing ministry.
Yes.
Both you and Andre, and then you independently prior to getting married. How has that evolved? Talk about it. And even speak to those who have just become moms and maybe struggling with that transition. They feel like they're losing themselves, their independence. They don't know ministry looks different.
Right.
Like that. Speak to them.
Whew. I didn't mention how me and Andre met. Should I mention that first? So they're like, how did the next man come in? So let me just share that. I'll give you the really short version of that. Andre and I were friends for 13 years before we got together. He came into the church through my brother. They used to play basketball together in high school. And that's how Andre came into the church. And so we were always friends. He was that friend that supported me when I was starting out in music, coming out to all of the little concerts and all of that stuff. He was like, it was my parents and him, the best supporter, right? But there was never anything romantic between us. And then it was bypassing a lot of details. There was just a season where I remember the Lord just started changing my heart towards him. And that came out of a conversation with somebody that, in fact, he had dated before. And by this point, they had broken up. That person was engaged to somebody else. And I really wanted them to get married because I was like, she's amazing. This is awesome. And I remember I was asking her, why didn't it work out? Really hoping that this is going to work out for you guys. Because he had told me his side of the story. And she just said, just basically wasn't the will of God. And so they had moved on. And that's when she was telling me that she actually asked Andre about me when they first got together. Because she's like, you guys have always been good friends. Has there never been anything there? And he said, no, there hasn't been, but any guy would be lucky to date Cass. I was like, what? But for me, it was just awkward. I'm what? He's my friend, right? So I just thought that was kind of weird. But that conversation had to happen. Otherwise, my eyes wouldn't have been open up. Or maybe if it's God's will, God would have used something else. So months go by and then that just kept coming back to me. I'm like, why would Andre say I didn't say anything to him about it? And then I remember I took his sister out for an event and brought her back home. And when I brought her back home, I remember the door opened, Andre was letting her in, and I remember hearing God say, "That's your husband." And then I almost fell out of the car. I was like, "What in the world?" Yes, because I that's what it was gonna take. And because I'm just like, I had a completely different idea of how I thought my husband was gonna come about. So God was like, "That's leave that idea alone," right? Because I'm like, if we're already friends, then it's not gonna turn into something romantic. That's what I thought. So I remember that, but now it's still months before anything happens. And I refuse to even pray about him. No, I think that was my imagination. I don't think I really heard God. It couldn't have been the Lord, but it just kept coming back to me stronger and stronger. Just started praying about it lightly here and there. Lord, maybe if it's your will, I don't know if it is, but maybe if it is. And so then it was like that Christmas that me and Andre are gatherers. We're the ones that always bringing our friends and family together. But we didn't really spend a lot of time just one-on-one, right? Very small time together, just the two of us. Well, that Christmas, every time we invite people out, nobody else would show up and it would be just the two of us. And then it started getting weird to talk to him. I didn't know what to say. And I'm like, I've known this guy for over a decade. Why am I so nervous? By the end of that Christmas, we have a conversation and realize there's mutual feelings here. And then it's a long story of how all came together. But from that point to when we got married was maybe about a year. It was the Lord. When it's the Lord, no time to delay. Let go. Because when it's God, if it was us, it would have been 6 months, but it was a year. Yes. So now we've been married for it'll be 9 years in June. So exciting. Honestly, it's so exciting. It doesn't feel like it's been 9 years. It's like, wow, God is so good to us. So our son Zion he just turned 6 just a week and a half ago. And he is full of energy and he is your typical boy. The challenge that, oh my goodness, becoming a mom, I had no idea. Absolutely no idea what it was going to take to become a mom, what it's still taking to be a mom, the sacrifices that you're making, the time, the love that you're giving. I feel like that's probably the easier part, except when he's misbehaving, but I still love him. Oh, you're still so cute, but you're still gonna get reprimanded, right? But becoming a mom, first being married, I didn't realize how selfish I was until I got married. And then I was like, ooh, I'm really about myself, right? You have no idea. So all of a sudden, your schedule has to line up with somebody else. And before I would just go wherever I wanted, book a ticket, fly somewhere. The first couple of years of marriage was a rude awakening. I would just make plans and then be like, obviously, Andrew's gonna be cool with it. He's like, actually, I don't really want to do that. And he's like, hold up. So man, I didn't think about that. I just figured we'd be on board because we won, right? Man, it just became this time of trying to understand one another and how we live together and how we cohabitate. All of that. There's so many things that you can do all the premarital counseling, which I highly recommend. However, it's still not going to fully prepare you to be in a household, a one-bedroom apartment with some man. It's just not. Nothing can fully prepare you for that. You have to be in it, and then you're like, oh, this is what they're talking about. Right? So that was a big transition getting married. And then having Zion and realizing, oh my goodness, now I have less and less time for myself. So much. When you're single, you have all the time in the world, and we don't value that because I didn't fully value it when I was single. Did not. And then you get married and you're like, I would just love a little bit more time to myself, right? Listen, we're not complaining. I just want, because I feel like when nobody told me this stuff, right? They're just like, oh, the most I heard was marriages can be hard work at times, but they didn't really actually break it down. What does that mean? Right? And so having my son the first couple of years, well, actually the first year and a half, I would say everything was progressing and normal. And then it's just like he was not developing at the same rate as other babies. He would say a word and then he would stop saying that word. So it was like just regression. And then we're like, what's happening here? And now the pandemic starts. We're waiting in this long waiting queue to even see our doctor. It was going to take a long time. And by the time we did see the doctor, now we're realizing there's something that's not right here. So she sends us to a pediatrician. That's when we start hearing the word autism. And I didn't even know what that was. A very limited view of that or understanding of that. And so then it's doing the research, trying to figure out what that was. And he wasn't diagnosed at that time. I don't know why, but the pediatrician didn't diagnose him. He said that we had to go to an autism center to get more testing. And because there were certain things that he was doing that maybe didn't line up with that, and then other things that were. We and Andre were just like, so at this point, we figured he can't even go to school. Now he's 4 years old. We're figuring, and there's obviously a lot of things that have happened in that time frame. But I didn't even think he could go to school because he wasn't speaking. There was a lot of things that he was delayed on. And so we were living in London at the time. We moved to Mississauga and actually Michelle, who wonderful, wonderful lady. And she was a Sunday school director at our church at the time. And so she already thought that Zion was diagnosed. And so then she was asking us different questions and they were just so accommodating and just so helpful when it came to Zion. And so she was asking me, do you guys have a pediatrician here? No, we don't. So she set us up with her kid's pediatrician. And by the second meeting, Zion was diagnosed. And then I remember the pediatrician looks at us and he's like, well, so he's starting school in a few weeks. And we're like, school? He's like, do you not have him registered? I didn't even know he could go to school. And so within 3 weeks, it was paperwork. It was a lot, those few weeks. And then Zion started school. So he was officially diagnosed. I couldn't even talk about it without crying. I felt so much shame. I felt like we're always just being looked at because you always feel like you have to explain your child's behavior. And I had worked so hard on getting him to listen from the time he was a year old. And I'm going to have that good picnic. So if you're not Jamaican, picnic child, I will have that child that's going to listen. And I worked day and night at getting him to listen. And then part of it with the diagnosis is that those things don't always line up. And so you have to find different ways and different methods to communicate because he's still nonverbal. We do believe he'll be speaking. I'm believing for his miracle. That's already a set thing we're believing. But we're also just trusting in God's timing. But this process has been one of the most difficult processes I've been through, I think, in my life. And trusting God, even when I can't see it. And there's some days I'm like, God, just show me something little to hold on to. And then God will give that to me. And there's days that we have that are really challenging. I don't want to say bad days, but just challenging days where I'm in tears and I'm like, I just can't figure out how to do this. And every time God will show up and just give me the peace that I need or give me, this is how to talk to him. This is how to deal with this, right? Or maybe this is the reason why he's acting out. And so just to give you an example, if he's frustrated, he doesn't know how to communicate. So then that turns into temper tantrums. So if it's a challenging day, within an hour, that could be 10 to 15 temper tantrums where he's pushing you, he's mad, he's throwing stuff, or he's climbing things there. So it's a lot. It's really overwhelming, right? And so in those days, I will be honest, there's just, God, I don't know if, did I really, really want this? Is this really what I asked for? And then you're looking at your friends and their kids are, you know what I mean? It just seems that they're not having the same struggles that we're having. And you're just like, wow, Lord, I just wanted to have just everything to be normal, everything to be pretty much perfect, right? And you know what I mean? Kids are going to be kids, but we didn't know that is going to be like this. And so getting to a place, I used to think that I was being punished, right? Yeah. Wow. It's so hard to talk about this and not cry because it's not even just with my son or with the diagnosis. It could be a sickness that somebody's going through. It could be financial difficulties. It could be struggles in your family. And you're like, what did I do to deserve this? And you feel like maybe God's punishing me, and that's not the God that we serve. And so for a long time, that's why I couldn't talk about it, because I really felt like I did something so bad in my past that maybe God has now taken this out on me through this. And that's not the case. And so literally my God has completely shifted my perspective and just healed some of those broken areas in my life where it's like where you just don't want to go through anything. I've been through things in my life and I'm like, Lord, I've passed the test, right? I deserve to have what I'm asking for. You know what I mean? And not understanding that everything that God brings us through is for our growth. And so every day that I look at my son, I'm like, thank you for the blessing that he is. Even in moments that maybe I have a hard time seeing it, help me to see him for the blessing that he is, because you know what, Tash? Like, because we're going through this, we're now able to reach other families that don't have the Lord, that we're able to show them that you can still have joy even when it doesn't make sense, even when we're struggling with our kids, even when we don't have the answer, we're still able to have joy. And the doors that God has opened for us. We went to a program in Brampton called We Rock the Spectrum, and it's phenomenal. This family opened this, it's kind of like an indoor playground. They open it up for kids on the spectrum because it's sometimes it's hard to go to a playground and then you're constantly have to explain yourself and you're like, oh, sorry, you're apologizing a lot for behavior or if something just doesn't turn out. And so this place, you don't have to explain anything because there's other kids that are also on the spectrum, and so we were invited to go be a part of this program. It was phenomenal. And me and Andre there, and if you're around us, we love to laugh and we're gonna have a good time. We're gonna have a good time, right? And Zion is also a very, very happy child. And so he's the loudest one there, and he was on this zip line. He's laughing and he's having a great time. Well, they had some media person show up. And so they came over and they're like, is it okay if we interview you? I'm like, so they interviewed us and we're supposed to, I don't know, I can't remember the name of the paper of that area, but they did a write up on us. They called us and I already knew that it was gonna happen. I felt it because I said, it's not because of me and Andre and who we are as people. It's because of God in us. And when people come over and they're just like, wow, you're just so happy and they see what you're going through. That's our testimony. That there's gonna be moments that I'm down because I'm gonna be real. There's gonna be moments that I'm crying. There's gonna be moments that I feel devastated. But guess what? I'm gonna get back up again. That's the God that we serve, right? There's times we're gonna go down, but we're not gonna stay down, right? He's gonna give us the strength to continue. And so when other people see that testimony, they're like, there's something different here. And I'm like, God, you've allowed this to happen. You didn't do this to us, but you've allowed it to happen because you want us to reach others. And we're walking through doors that we could never have walked through had Zion not been diagnosed with this. So
I really pray that what you heard today has encouraged you. And there's so much that's just going through my mind. I think everything that we've talked about today really just circles back and connects with each other. And I just see the faithfulness of, when I hear your story, everything that you've been through,
yes,
what it means to live a life surrender.
amen.
That's the thing. The truth about it is when we say yes to God, we don't know what we're saying yet.
It could be anything.
Dude, there are going to be days when you're down and you're crying and you're out. A lot of people don't show that, but I want to thank you for being transparent with me. But thank you for your yes. Thank you for sharing the story and for sharing your wisdom and experience with us. It's going to speak to someone. So last two questions to close out the episode. I think a key aspect to all of this and living that surrendered life is really knowing how to discern and know the voice of God. I know God speaks to everyone,
Yes,
right? But how do you know the voice of God? How do you know when it's the Lord speaking versus just our own will and desires or even enemy?
yes. So when I believe that I've heard from the Lord, I'm always testing that. So I'm not just, okay, because I heard from the Lord and boom, they move on it. I actually wait and I will pray about that again. Okay, Lord, if I really did hear from you, please confirm that I've heard from you. And God will use people in the word of God, use scripture. He will use situation, right, to confirm that, right? So to give you an example, when myself and Andre, when I believed that this was the will of God, even though I heard the voice of the Lord, I still was questioning it. Lord, is that really you?
Yeah.
Is that real? Did I really just hear that? Maybe it was just me because I really want to get married, Lord. Maybe that was just me. So this is what I know to be true is that the Lord will confirm his word, not just one time, he'll continue to confirm it. Because I've spoken with people and they're like, I heard from the Lord and they're like, I prayed that the sky would be blue and look, it's blue. All right, that's the Lord. Let's move on that. Ask God to continue to confirm that. right? And he will continue to confirm that. So then that is letting me know I really did hear from the Lord. Now, I feel like the longer that you spend with the Lord, the longer time that you spend with him, is that you're able to recognize his voice quicker. You're not going to know his voice if you don't spend time with him. If you're not reading his word, you're just not going to know his voice. And so there's something within you. I believe this is the Lord, right? Now, there's going to be sometimes we're just not going to get it right. Don't let that discourage you or dissuade you. We're human. We're going to make mistakes. So this is something we have to continue to work at. We're going to continue to grow those muscles, right? And so it's the same thing with listening and wanting to hear the voice of God. Ask him for clarity. Ask him to show you in a different way. And he's faithful. He's going to show you a different way for you to feel like, and the peace is also another thing. When I feel the peace of God, now we can move on this. Another thing too is asking God for his timing. God, I believe I've heard from you, but help me to know your timing and to make it crystal clear because I don't want to miss it. Right. And so there's some practical things that I just ask of the Lord. And then I also, in my life, I'm submitted to my pastor. I think we all should be submitted to our pastors. I'm submitted to my husband. And before I thought, oh, I can submit. I'm ready to submit until it's time to submit when we don't agree. And he's like, okay. Right. But I'm just like, but you know what? How I rest in it is that I'm doing this as unto the Lord. So if Andre messes up, God's going to mess with it. He's going to fix him. Right. So I'm just chill here. I'm just chill here. All right. You heard from the Lord. All right. So my pastor, all right, I trust that he's hearing from the Lord and God has placed me under his leadership. So that is my protection. So you believe you've heard from the Lord. Now I'm going to go to my husband. I'm going to go to my pastor. Even with most decisions, I'm going to my pastor. Hey, this opportunity has come up. Just want to get your thoughts. He's praying with me. He's giving his feedback, right? What he believes. So all of these different things to just make sure that we're in the right place that we need to be in.
Through all of this, question I would ask is, what are some key qualities to look for in a mentor or a community?
To pray about and to ask the Lord if that's a person that should be speaking into your life.
Right.
I definitely highly value mentorship. I don't currently have a mentor, but I did for quite some time, and she was so instrumental in so many areas and decisions that I had to make. And she was just there. God just had her to be there when I needed her, right? So I remember when we started our mentorship, and so I remember saying to you, it might not be like an everyday or an every week thing, right? And so this is going to be led by the Lord because sometimes you feel like I need to hear from him every day. So you definitely want to make sure that person is being led by the Lord. They have fruit. Make sure they have fruit. Make sure they have those. You see that fruit. How are they living? How are they walking? How are they talking? All of these things matter, right? Because if you're allowing that person to speak into your life, you want to make sure that they're hearing from the Lord. And the also important thing is that you want to make sure that this is lined up before you go here because that mentorship should just confirm what God's already shared with you. So it can't replace that. And I remember for myself when I first had a mentor and she's speaking into my life, I was almost trying to use her to replace God without realizing it. So say something would come up, oh, I gotta call her and see what she thinks before I prayed about it. And I'm like, hold on, she's human, right? I'm human, right? And you also want to make sure that that mentor is always directing you in your relationship and directing you back to the Lord. Not just saying, oh, this is what I think, this is what have I experienced, this is what you should do, right? Like, it's not about that. How can I walk alongside you and encourage you in your walk with the Lord? And that person has to be ahead of you, right? And so they can say, hey, I can say, Tash, I've been through this and this is how it worked out. And this is where I've fallen. And somebody that's going to be honest with you as well. Because if they can't be authentic and honest with you, how are you supposed to learn and grow?
Thank you so much. I can every single time we meet up, every single time we chat, I can't say thank you for all the way that you poured into my life, for coming on the podcast and sharing everything that you've shared. It honestly has been a blessing. I'm gonna allow you to share any last words, encouragement, and that the Lord has laid on your heart to say. A minute.
Yes.
I wanted to say thank you so much.
My pleasure to be here. Well, first, I'm going to say I'm so proud of this girl. It has been an absolute honor to be one of her mentors and just to see the work that God is doing in your life, the work that you're allowing Him to do in your life is so inspiring. And I know that it's inspiring others, like your viewers and other people that are just watching you that you might not even know that's watching you. So I'm incredibly proud of you. And I tell you this all the time. I really am. And that you do the hard work, right? You're not afraid of the hard work. And so I would say that to everyone else as well is don't be afraid of the hard work. We're not going to be able to grow unless we do the hard work. My husband and I were like really this year, it's all about my word for the word is just consistency.
Right.
And there's just different areas in my life that I really want to be consistent. So in my health journey, in my spiritual journey, in all of the things,
Yeah.
not necessarily looking for all of the big moments, but making those tiny changes every day, right? And so I would say that I'm a recovering perfectionist and maybe others maybe some of you can relate to that. It's two of us right here, right? So it's not about being perfect, but every day, how can I draw closer to God? How can I grow in other areas, whether it's your business, in your work? How can you be a good steward in all things? Because at the end of the day, everything that you're doing is it unto the Lord, not for our personal growth, or we're not trying to build a kingdom. We're trying to build God's kingdom. And so wherever He's placed you, everything that you're doing, how you take care of yourself, how you take care of others, let it be as unto the Lord, right? And allow Him to lead, guide, and direct everything in your life. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not unto your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will, He promises to direct your path. So thank you for having me. It's been an absolute honor to be here with you today.
We have reached the end of the episode. I just want to thank each and every one of you guys for watching, for tuning in. And I just want to encourage you to remember to share. If you're watching this on YouTube, you want to subscribe. You do not want to miss out on any of the episodes. Y'all need to share and show the love. So I just wanted to share that you'll never miss an episode if you subscribe. If you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Google Play, then please leave us a review if you enjoy it so that others know this is the podcast to tune into. And don't forget to check on Your Daily Reminder by visiting www.yourdailyreminderco.com and check out the merch that we have there. It's some good godly reminders for you to have with you on a daily basis to remind you of God's love, purpose for your life. You're going to really love it. So go ahead, again, www.yourdailyreminderco.com. Check it out. It's on the screen. Guys, I love you and God bless you.